think we should be live. I think the audio is working just fine. Okay. Alright. Let me double check on YouTube. Let's see. Let's see if we are live. Yes, we are. Okay. So this is session number 3, looking at the Limbo, the SQL rewrite in Rust from the folks at Turso. We've been looking at the IO module, and today we are going to focus on the Unix implementation of the IO primitives. I think yesterday we went over the memory one, so today we are going to try and make it through the Unix one. And I think earlier I was doing a quick scan, and I think this I'm not sure. Maybe anyway, there was some recent code changes from 2 weeks ago that I think they changed the there was something I don't even remember, so I don't know why I'm bringing this up. Okay, here it is. Rename Linux backend to IOUin. I mean not IOUin, sorry. Rename Linux backend to IOUring and Darwin to Unix. So there was some moving things around that happened recently. So I don't know if that's worth knowing at this point, just going through the code base. I don't expect there should be some similarities between the Unix implementation. I mean there should be some similarity overall across all the implementations, minus some special handling, but overall it shouldn't be completely or vastly different. So yeah, well, we'll go through that and see if we can maybe watch some content on YouTube and then call it a night after that. Let me see if I can make an adjustment really quick on the stream. I'll make this window here a little smaller so that it doesn't get in the way of the display of the code on the screen capture. Okay, let me see. All right. Okay, well, let's get to it. It's not getting any gosh, what's the saying? It's getting late, basically. Anyway, All right, Unix implementation of IO. So right away, we have the OC and ref cell. So again, quick reminder, ref cell gives you single-threaded reference counting. Well, OC gives you that, sorry. Ref cell is for interior mutability. Yep. And so in what was that? Okay. If so, this is the single-threaded version of awk mutex, basically. All right. Actually, can I? I'm tempted to restart my browser here. New window. Ugh, I hate this. Okay. Because the reason why I felt like doing that is because I recently removed some extensions, and just now I got the sense that there was still some lingering of the extensions that I installed. So that's why I wanted to restart it. Okay, so let's actually get going. All right, so Unix IO. So again, we have the RC ref cell, single-threaded version of awk mutex. The polar, what's the definition of that? Okay. Where does that come from? Polling, the polling library. And that is that a dependency that we bring in? Yes, okay. All right. By default, polling is done in one-shot mode, which means interest in IO events needs to be re-enabled after an event is delivered. If we are interested in the next event of the same kind, okay, you have to essentially re-register to receive subsequent events after you've consumed one. Okay. Polling library. Okay, so you have the polar, you have the events, and then you have a hash map of callbacks. Okay, so here we are initializing a new one. That's pretty straightforward. So when you open a file, obviously you need the path, the flags. There is a parameter that we're not using, direct, I guess for doing direct IO. Okay, so we get a handle to the file. Custom flags. This is new to me. Fast custom flag. Never had to use them or be aware of them before. This builder option here, custom flags. Okay, so you want to be able to read, you want to be able to write, you want to be able to create the file if it doesn't already exist. Well, depending on what was passed in as the flag, right? If part of the flags include the ability to create the file if it doesn't exist, then you'll be able to create the file. And then you open. So now you have your file handle. You wrap it with the Unix file struct. And so for this file, you wanna also have handles for the polar and the callbacks. And remember, these are the clones here of reference counting. Like you're not actually cloning the polar object or the callbacks object, just basically acquiring a reference to them. All right, let's move on. So now you get the environment variable, disable file lock. Excuse me. Long day, but we're here. We are here, and we are doing the work. Okay, so if this environment variable is not set, then we lock the file. Oh, okay, we'll see the implementation later. Down. Run once. If there are no callbacks, just do a no op. Basically, just return early. You acquire the events, you clear them. So what does run once do? What is its use case? It feels like, so you're acquiring the events and clearing them. Why is that? I feel like I'm lacking some context here. Okay, for the polar, you use the polar to wait for events. Excuse me. Still trying to figure out why we have an events clear here. Oh, run once. Wait, then I guess this relates to what we read at the very beginning from the polling library, where for each submission or event, it's a one-time thing by default. And if you want to continuously receive events, you have to explicitly re-register the event handler slash listener. Okay, so the puller waits until a given timeout. Okay, so for event and events, oh man, Friday night. I'm struggling here, but that's okay. We'll make it through. Okay, so for event and events, borrow mute, remove, wait, okay, so we remove the existing callback because now that callback is basically stale, because now there's a new event, or let's say a new event instance that came in. So that old callback, wait, no, okay, no, you're not really, okay. Even though it says remove, you really are, well, okay, no, makes sense. You're removing for the purpose of actually using it. You're not just removing it to clear from the callbacks registry. You actually, it's a removal for actually using it for what it's meant to do anyway. Okay, so you have the callback match if it's a read or if it's a write. So if it's a read, oof, this looks gnarly. Ref file and ref C. Let me see what the type is for this one. Okay. Okay, it's actually down here. So if it's a read, you pass in the file handle and then the completion object, which will include the completion callback. And for the write, so there's the file that you want to write to, there's the completion objects, and then there's the buffer whose bytes you want to write to the file. And then I'm guessing usize is going to be the number of bytes that were written. Okay, so again back here we're getting a handle to the file, well, a reference to the handle to the file. Well, okay, it's not specifically the handle of the file. It's a bunch of stuff that's wrapping the file, the RC and ref cell. Okay, so now you have your file. Again, you do borrow mute. To get the basically penetrate deeper into the wrapper. Um, then you have your completion. And for that, from there you get again a deeper nested construct within the completion. You get and from that you get the inner buffer. So it's a lot of going down another level to actually get to the objects that you need to do things. So eventually you get to the buffer that you want to read bytes into. Given the position, you seek up to that position in the file, and then you start reading bytes from it into the completion buffer. And I mean, the file will fit that buffer up to the buffer size, or at least the minimum between the buffer size and the amount of bytes between the current offset, which will be the position that was passed in as an argument, the current offset up to the end of the file. So the minimum between that and the length of the completion buffer will be what gets read. That's the amount of bytes that will be read into this completion buffer. In terms of the write, again, we extract the file, the buffer, seek to the position, and then we write into the file from the completion buffer. And then for the result, we get the number of bytes that were written or read. So if you see this from the standard library, the file operation, the read operation, it returns an IO result of usize, which again, the usize here is how many bytes were actually read, right? I mean, but yeah, if you look at here, returning how many bytes were read. And so, and this one will be how many bytes were written. So that's what the N here is. And then you complete. Just run once, generate a random number. I think that's the same one as what we have in the memory implementation. And the NE here is for neutral endianness. So I think it just chooses between the big endian or little endianness based on the native endianness. Oh, so it's not. I don't know why I've been calling it neutral. It's a native. Oh no. Skill issues. Okay. Come on, let's power through this. I am fading. Getting the current time as a formatted date string or datetime date string. That's fine. So these are completion callbacks. I think we briefly already went over this some moments ago. So this is the representation of a Unix file. So you have the Unix IO and a Unix file constructs. All right. So we implement the log file method trait or trait method for the Unix file. So you get a handle to the file, which is you got a handle, and then you get a file descriptor, which, I mean, what is the type definition for this? Oh, interesting. Okay. fset or fset lock is a non-blocking lock. The lock will be released when the file is closed or the process exits or after an explicit unlock. Okay. Excuse me. So you have the file descriptor. Wait, so what is this function? Okay. Just looking at the documentation of, I mean, how do you even read this? File controller or file control lock. Is that how you will read this? File control locks. So you pass in the file descriptor. If it's exclusive, then choose the appropriate flock operation. In case an error happens. Failing lock file is locked for another process. Okay, so this tries to acquire a lock on the file, and if it fails, it'll let you know about it. Unlock file, pretty straightforward compared to actually flocking. Wait. Oof. My brain just literally just went out of existence and came back. I don't even know if that's appropriate to say. Gosh, I just experienced a major glitch right now. Did I say flock? Is it a lock file? Oh no. I am fading. Alright. So you can lock a file and unlock a file. Read, process read. Wait, is that what read stands for? Why is it called pay read? Process read as in from this process read. Oh, okay. So, well, of course, it's uh, position read, not process read. Oh no, skill issues. Diminishing skill issues though. Now I know. Let's hope I don't forget. Um, yeah, okay. Position rate makes complete sense. Total, complete sense. Okay, so you obtain a handle to the file. Then you extract your read completion. And from that, you also extract the buffer you want to read into. And then you do the actual I/O. You know, the position read thing. You pass in the buffer you would like to use to receive the bytes, the offset at which you want to start reading from in the file, and obviously the file descriptor. Okay, so depending on the results, you will know how many bytes were received. And then you call the callback, and otherwise, when you have this particular error, you say that the position read blocks, that's the trace here. Oh, okay. So, wait, so these are, I'm not getting any information. I guess I can ask, tell me about this error case. Is deep sync? Yeah. All right, so the I know again error case is a common pattern. What it represents. A non-blocking operation couldn't be completed. It's not a fatal error. Okay. So basically, in cases where the operation cannot, well, is not going to complete, right away. If it's going to block, you can watch out for that signal / error case, and then I guess set up an async, or set up a polling thingy so that you are alerted when things are ready for you. Yeah, in this case, it triggers polling setup. Okay, a non-block flag. code then sets up polling to be notified when the operation can proceed. Okay. Alright, so you have your file descriptors. We do the unsafe thing here where we get a handle to a polar and add, and this is a hash map if I remember correctly. Oh no, wait. Oh, never mind. This is the polar on the actual Unix file. Okay, not the Unix IO construct. This is on the actual Unix file. Anyway, so you basically add. Stop it. Add a thing that does the polling on your behalf. Basically, you specify the event that you want to poll for. Okay. And then you update the callbacks. Because you just triggered or added a polar. And then you have your callbacks. Pretty normal. Okay, so for the write, starts off the same as the function above for reading. And so here, again, we can track the number of bytes that were written. And otherwise, get the raw file descriptor and also register a polar for that. I mean, it's the same thing as the read one. It's the idea. It's the same idea. It's not immediately available, but you want to register a polar that's going to poll on your behalf until things are ready, to proceed. For sync, yeah, you just got fsync. Okay, and for the size, pretty straightforward as well, actually. And so when you're dropping a Unix file, you want to make sure that you unlock the file smart. Okay. So that was a Unix one. All right. Definitely don't on this Friday night in the current state that I am. I don't think I have bandwidth for another file to go through right now. So I think we have Windows and IOUing left to go through for this particular IO module. So just FYI, the plan is to do the IO module here and then go through the storage. It will be interesting to see how they went and implemented the B tree. This is gonna take multiple sessions to go through and probably some supporting content. I know that Planet Scale did a whole like super well detailed B-tree post with examples and everything. So that I think that will be a good supporting piece of content to check out while going through this file, this implementation of a B tree. Although I don't know, once we get to storage, I don't know that we'll start there. We'll probably start at the wall, either the wall or I don't know, page cache or the buffer pool. Anyway, we'll figure it out. Okay. So let me see. Why did I open this again? V-tree is more than I thought I'd want to know. Okay, so yet another piece of content to look into for the B-tree stuff. Okay, so I think I said we'll try and see if we can go through some stuff.
Every day, our world gets a little more connected, but a little further.
People have probably called them like region.
Wait, is that not already here? Why do I have this open twice?
Welcome everybody, great to have you here. I'm really excited.
Okay. Right. I wanna go through this, but this is long, and I don't think I have it. I have the stamina for that right now. Like, I am fading. Been up since around 4:30 this morning. Let's see, what's a low-key thing to explore right now? I'm almost tempted to watch this one.
Threads, a subject in computer science that many people are afraid of. And no wonder.
I ain't afraid of no threads. What you talking about? Speak for yourself. I fear no threads. Let's see. I don't know. I'm not feeling it right Let's see. Does Google have any recommendation? Shiny test syndrome. Okay, well, that's a light one. We can quickly.
But bro, why we move from PHP and jQuery to React to the client-side rendering when it comes to web development nowadays? We're trying to go get to move everything to the server, Next.js, server actions, and SSR. I don't know, because life would be a tragedy if it wasn't a comedy. What do you want me to say? We're gonna keep running this wheel. Honestly, in 2 years, people are gonna say, my gosh, move everything to the client. And then we're gonna do the client again, and then everyone's gonna be like, no, let's move it to the server, and then they're gonna move it on the server again. No one's gonna be happy. Can I tell you a secret to life? Why you see this kind of repetitive nature of thin client, thick client, and all this? It's actually really, really simple. First, you start building something. When you build this, it seems really nice. It seems really great. This new way of doing things, let's just call it jQueryous for now, is really awesome. So much better than what was before. You can actually do like CSS selectors with Sizzle. It's fantastic. So
yeah, I remember the days. Oh man, CSS everywhere. I actually wonder if I still have one of the projects that I wrote way back then. It was a Twitch client. No, wait. Can I just? I no longer have it in my overview. Let me see. Twitch. Yeah, FCC Twitch. Is it still up? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Never mind. It was on Heroku, and I'm sure Heroku wants nothing to do with me at this point because I don't think I ever paid them a single dollar. Anyway, but yeah, raw dogging jQuery, man. Back in the day, was fun.
you start building, and
Well,
it gets
okay, fun is relative, but you know, it was good for what it was for, and I mean, for most things that you built, or that I, was building at the time, it was useful. Like, it worked. It wasn't like I didn't have to know a million different things from some framework or whatever. I don't know. It just, I mean, I guess you can say maybe there's some nostalgia, a little bit of it. But yeah, I mean, you when you think back to those times, it feels like those times were simpler times. Like, you didn't have a million different decisions to make about which library to use here and there and all that. Well, okay, maybe I'm overstating how simpler it was. I guess you can say it was just a different kind of complexity. Anyway,
it's great. But then you cross like 20,000 lines of code, and it just kind of sucks on the front end. So what do you do next? At some point, you get into this new library called FreeAct. And FreeAct, man, HTML, it's so good. It's so much better. Man, there's like life cycles. And then you go, oh, once it gets big, it gets really bad. And you're like, oh, why is this so bad? And so the next thing happens. And it's bad. And then the next thing happens, and when it gets big, it's bad. And then the next thing happens, it gets big and it gets bad. And like, you know what the secret is? Coding always kind of sucks.
Yeah.
It's always hard. It's like eventually everything just sucks.
Yeah.
And that's where the fun is. It's just
Eventually, yeah. Like most of the work is really just keeping things running. It's not the greenfield, shiny new object experience. And you learn. I mean, hopefully, I will hope that you learn to adapt and understand that you just kind of have to learn to cope with doing refactoring and maintenance work on quote unquote legacy code bases. Just being able to just dig in and understand code that you haven't written yourself, and be able to add value or bring value to it. It's not, it's not shiny. It's the dirty work, but you have to do it, which is why I think reading code is still going to be one of the most demanding aspects of the job. Being able to read and understand code and being able to just diagnose or play detective on a code base, whether it's performance related, logic issues, just even structurally, like restructuring things. There's also security/safety matters, and all of that requires being able to just sit down and just read the code and try to understand what's going on, build up that context. So, yeah.
building the thing. And you know what ends up happening? You end up in this weird situation where your boat is just filled so far with crap, and you're like, dude, look at the boat I made. The boat is so small, but look at all the shit I've been able to fit inside this boat. And it's just so amazing that you've been able to build it that big. And eventually all the devs get together and they convince their boss that actually if we burn this boat, the next boat, it's going to be better.
Yeah.
Trust me, the next boat.
Yeah. The fabled rewrite, right? And it's usually when people first join a new org or something, or a new code base, and they think they think they're hot shit, and they're like, yeah, I've looked at the code and this, and yeah, we should definitely rewrite this thing. Like, just rewrite the whole thing. There's this brand new library that does this fancy thing, and let's do it. Let's rewrite it. It'll be much better this time. It seldom ever turns out that a rewrite was a good idea, or even when it's a good idea, there's no guarantee that it'll see the light of day. So, so if you ever are in a room where somebody is like very, very pushing hard to do a rewrite, either they are not experienced or there's something, like, you really have to be suspicious and ask questions, really challenge their position for why they think a rewrite will, not only actually be something that can be done and be of, uh, you know, actually add value to the business, right? Um, because I mean, oftentimes it's not that you can just stop and forget about the existing code base and take your sweet time to, think about uh, all the perfect code you are going to write for this new rewrite. Take your time and do it right this time. The business still has to make money, and that usually means fixing bugs or adding new features, and that will need to also be accounted for in a rewrite, right? So now you basically need to have bandwidth to work on two separate projects, basically. um yeah, just rewrites should not be just a thing that people just do, right? There should be a very solid reason why you're doing a rewrite, and you need to be prepared um, for the possibility that uh, it's just not going to work out the way you think it will. So, but if you were to actually do it and you really had to, you need to have a setup, especially from a infrastructure standpoint. You want to have a setup where you can quickly have something uh, running, like the rewrite. Have the very basic, like zero stage version that's running in parallel with the old one, right? Like just make the interface or the endpoints available, and you don't actually have to have the implementation details behind those APIs. You just want something that's running so that you can at least maybe even just log the incoming requests, and have a process where you can quickly um, push changes and see how those changes over time, or have a way to observe or monitor um, the way the new system is responding to requests compared to the current slash to be grandfathered, or to be deprecated system. So you basically want to have both things running and incrementally add functionality to the new one, and be able to always compare, what is the output of both. And eventually you want to get to a point where you have some level of feature parity between both systems. And eventually you get to a point where you can go live but still not do the switch. You can go live like in actual production, so that you can actually see how the new system would handle actual production workload. So essentially you have a duplicated system, and then you do a slow, if all of that works out, then you start doing a slow rollout. Maybe only, I don't know, 10% of the traffic goes to the new one. I don't know, maybe even 10% is high, depending on what the system is supposed to be doing and the ramifications of things going wrong. So I don't know, maybe you even start with 2%, or something. And you can also cherry pick which requests go to that new system, like the low risk stuff that you can quickly flag as, you know, going wrong, but it's also not that terrible, like, you know, from a business perspective, if the requests are failing. Anyway, so the point is that be very careful about rewrites. Always prefer to do the hard work and the dirty work of thinking about, well, what can we do about our current system right now, the way it is? Like, what is so terrible about it that we cannot just put our heads down and figure out solutions, incremental, modular solutions to, you know, to fix it, right? Instead of trying to just rewrite a whole new thing. Like, do you have really good monitoring setup for the current system? Do you have a way to measure whether, or I guess keep track of recurring issues and, you know, yeah. So there are so many things that you can do before committing to a rewrite, basically.
The next boat's a much better boat. This next boat, it's going to be incredible. It's not going to be full of crap. We're not going to make the same mistakes, okay? This new boat got, like, just something way cooler in it.
Yeah.
Well, what happens? Well, that VP gets fired because they stopped delivering features for 2 years while you rewrote everything. New boat shows up, and all the devs realize that they're actually still sad because that boat now sucks, and now they want to burn that mother French fry boat for the next boat. And boats just keep getting burned.
Yeah.
You know, you just try your best. You keep building. You try to scale up everything. All ideas eventually falter under the weight of scaling, and like that's just how it works. At some point, you just gotta be okay.
Yeah, and I think it's something that you learn even just in real life, that there are so many things that on paper just sound good, and they just make sense. But if you actually start thinking about how those ideas apply at scale, and the fact that, and I'm talking just in terms of, you know, not just programming, I'm talking general life, social, economical things or whatever. Yeah, at scale things become very difficult to do. Yeah, and so it's not just a programming thing, but, you know, it's definitely something that's you can easily talk about from the software engineering lens. Scale is the thing that really throws a wrench into things. Like, it's one thing to serve 100 users, all of them mostly on the East Coast. It's another thing, like if you have an e-commerce or a blog even, or I don't know, some stupid, I don't know, to-do app or whatever. It's another thing to then serve, I don't know, let's say 3 million of people across the entire United States. Like, it's different. Like, it's even the stuff that sounds good on paper in theory, and, you know, the quote unquote best practices or whatever, you kind of have to start questioning them when you start introducing matters of scale into the picture. And you know, and as you can imagine, like, you can start a greenfield project and everything is all nice and great and you feel like you're a god, for writing your beautiful, super cute and, perfect code. At least you think so. But then, you know, business being business, things, requirements change, demands come in. Hopefully, you're working for a successful business, and your code, your beautiful code that you wrote to handle 1,000 users, now maybe overnight now has to serve 1 million plus people. And changes may be required, and eventually you get to a point where you're just trying to hold things together. Like this whole idea of writing beautiful, perfect code is no longer truly practical, to spend time on. You just want to get your features in, fix bugs, and just maintain the thing. And yeah.
Okay with the fact that you're going to be in a boat, and the boat's probably just completely infested with shit. Like, that's just the way it works. Hey, just stop looking at your logging library. Why did Charles decide to write his own logger? Nobody knows why Charles did that, but that's just the life you live. And you don't have enough gosh dang energy to put in after hours work to change out your logger from log.js to Pinot or whatever one you want to do, because it's so integrated in the system and there's so many effing pieces that are now parsing Charles's amazing logging library. And that's just what happened. You can't rewrite all those services. It's just not possible. So you live in this boat. This is your boat now. This is your life. Is it bad? Is it good? You can make it into a nice boat. You can find your little corner, and you can sweep it up, and you can make something really, really nice in that one area. And that's like your little corner. Your corner doesn't have any shit, and it feels so nice. It looks really, really good. I mean, the rest is all kind of shitty. But this part is so nice. It's so clean. It's so beautiful.
And honestly, sometimes even that it's like it is nice to you, right? Because you have that context and whatever, and you've made it your corner of the code. But to somebody else who maybe is trying to do the same thing, they look at what you're doing and it's like, well, actually, whatever you're doing here is actually cramping my style, so even in that case, in your head you may be thinking that you're hot shit and doing your thing in your corner, but from the outside looking in, it's like, well, okay, well, all of this that you're doing is just adding a different kind of shit in a different corner of the code base anyway. So yeah.
Then somebody else from their just absolute rubbish pile will look over and look at your stuff and go, wow, look at that rubbish over there. Man, my side is so much nicer.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's like I was reading his mind.
And everybody thinks their little corner is the nicest.
Exactly.
Shiny turd syndrome.
Yeah.
Are you tired of e-signature vendors that are too expensive and don't provide the support you deserve?
Yeah. It's a lot of shit, man. It's a lot of shit. It's just, that's just how it is. And this whole AI situation doesn't actually help, right? Because now it's not just, human slop code
On days like today,
that you have to deal with. It's AI generated code that you need to deal with, and there's going to be a whole lot of it, like a lot of it, and on average it's gonna be shitty stuff that you just don't want to spend too much time with. But somebody's gonna have to do the work, right? Like somebody's gonna have to dig in and do the work, because you can't also expect AI to debug and fix its own code reliably. Because technically, what if it was so reliable in the first place, you wouldn't be having the problems in the first place. So yeah. All right, some AI stuff. Let's see.
I really do feel sorry for the public, for you guys essentially trying to keep up with AI news and the kind of questions you might have. Did OpenAI just automate my job with Operator? Who knows, you're probably thinking it's $200 and it's really hard to get past those clickbait headlines. Did the US government just invest $500 billion into a Stargate? What the hell's that? I heard China just caught up to the West in AI with something called DeepSeek. And why are people talking about humanity's last exam? So to try to help a little bit, I'm going to cover the 9 developments of the last 100 hours, honestly, if not exhaustively. Yes, of course, I read the DeepSeek paper in full and have spent hours testing the OpenAI Operator, as well as the Perplexity Assistant and all the rest. In case you're wondering, yes, I did edit this Perplexity response. First up in this listicle video is, of course, OpenAI's Operator, and it's kind of decent. It's okay. You have to use a VPN if you're not in the US, and honestly, I wouldn't do that for the functionality. I would do it if you want to kind of get a sense of where agents are going. Just straight up front, though, I can tell you that it's nowhere close to automating any kind of job for 2 major reasons. One is it often gets stuck in these kind of loops where it attempts the same kind of basic failed plan again and again. It's not essentially smart enough to...
So, just to interject, and maybe this is a sidebar, I think this whole idea of having these quote unquote agents go through these flows that are, I guess, human centric, the stuff that we are used to doing. It's like, oh, you want to go book a table, an open table. So you open your browser, you type opentable.com, then you go on there and you go through the offerings. So opentable.com, then you're waiting for the page to load, then you're looking around, you say, okay, generate maybe tomorrow. This flow here, this I want to say that this is what you would call a human-centric flow, right? This user experience and all that, I think it's misguided to have or to build these agents to do the same thing. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like this website here exists. It's a relic of us humans, or the way we interact with the internet, right? Your LLM doesn't need a nice, beautiful website page to do what it needs to do, right? It just needs data. So this thing where we're building agents that are supposedly supposed to mimic humans and open a browser tab, type in an address, wait for the page to load, then put in parameters, and then click around and all that. I don't want to say that's dumb or stupid, because I'm gonna say that I'm sure there are smart people working on this and investing their time, and that's how they're paying the bills. So I would just say it's misguided to do it like that. I think people need to start thinking differently about it's a new paradigm of just information retrieval and information storage or processing. So instead of a website, your LLM really just needs some sort of server, right? OpenTable just needs to make some sort of API endpoint or server where that is I guess, tailored for AI agent interaction, right? Um, for me personally, I think it just comes down to there are very few things in this world that doesn't boil down to database, uh, information access patterns. So really, in the world that I'm imagining, your AI agent is basically a client library that is talking to some database. And in that database, there are a bunch of functions and tables and all that, that some of them are set up in such a way that you can get information about, third-party services, which is already a thing. Like there are, let me see, I think there's something like Turbot. Is that what it's called? GitHub. Where, for example, instead of querying is that the one? Yeah. So instead of querying, let me see, is it PowerPipe? No, StreamPipe. Yeah. So zero ETL infinite possibilities, where you're able to, for example, query your AWS resources in SQL, right? If you go by whatever paradigm this operator thing from OpenAI is working on, it will be the AI agent opening a browser tab, logging into AWS, clicking around, right, to get the information it needs, which is dumb. Like it doesn't make sense. Like it's a machine. It doesn't care about your fucking HTML. Your beautiful HTML and CSS. It just needs the information that it needs to do what it needs to do. So instead, if it can just send out a SQL query, right? It's like you wanna get all the regions in a subnet. You don't need the AI agent to log in, like open a tab, log in, and then go find that. You can just do it as a SQL query. Like an example here, right? This is saying select all from Hacker News. So Hacker News is this website here. So if you go by the operator thing that OpenAI is doing, you will open a tab, and then the LLM will go here, look, or detect whatever the links, and then click on one, and then, okay, let me see. I didn't want to go to the actual video. I wanted to go to the comments. Go to the comments, and then I guess script this or whatever. But in this way here, it's just a SQL query. It just says, hey, give me the latest 10 new articles from Hacker News, right? Doesn't have to deal with parsing an HTML document and trying to understand where all the buttons are and when to click on this and that. No, it's straightforward. It's data. It's data. And I think eventually people are going to wake up to this, that this paradigm here is just so small-minded. But I get why OpenAI is doing it, because they're hemorrhaging money. So they just need to put something out there that people are going to use and pay for, right? Because, they have financial realities they have to face. But in terms of, making the best use of AI, this is not it. Like, in terms of automating stuff, this is, it's so small in thinking about things. Like, why would I want an agent to open a tab? Or why would we want that? Why not just talk to an API that has, a well-known schema or whatever? And again, I think databases are, like, eventually, I think databases are such a versatile type of machinery that I think a lot of this agentic thing that people are talking about, it's really just, it can really be mapped simply into database read and write, honestly. Like, I'll just, and I'm not specifically saying that, it has to be a particular kind of database. It can just be a server, and on that server, like any other API servers that we've been building for decades now, that server can talk to multiple databases depending on a query that comes in. And we just need the AI to be able to take the user intent, parse it, and send it in as a command to the backend. The backend processes it and talks to some database, either embedded, if you want to save on latency, query latency, or, some external database, right? Like we just saw with something like this library here, where you can create like on Postgres, you have this concept of foreign data servers. Is that what it's called? Wait, where's the website? Okay, here it is. And I think they have a lot of don't know. This website has changed, so I'm a little bit lost. I wanted to show an example with a unified Address APIs. Yeah, this here, basically this mantra here, that with SQL, I know people don't like to write SQL, but honestly, it's not. Can we do better? Yeah, sure, but it's just so, like, you can do a lot with it, right? Yeah, so foreign data wrappers, I think Postgres has that functionality where you can basically query external systems from Postgres. So here, this query is fetching information about AWS EC2 instances from some AWS account, right? Without actually interacting with the AWS API directly. You can just query it as a SQL query, and you can then integrate that with other third-party systems data, and do some processing on that. And at that point, we're talking about really this whole agentic whatever. It's just a matter of adding some artificial intelligence capability to the database query engine, right? Because the query engine can talk to different sources. Like if you take something like, GlareDB, for example, right? It's look at this query here, even on the home page, right? So this is coming from a Postgres database. This is coming from a that looks like somewhere on AWS, and this is coming from Snowflake, right? So multiple data sources, single query to get the information you need, and from that, then you can start taking, actions. So I mean, isn't that what? I mean, when people are raving about agentic workflows or whatever, isn't that basically it? You do a query, right? You get some information, you do some processing on the data, and then decide on the next step. What is so magical about that we can't have that as part of a query engine, right? That's my view on the whole agentic AI thing. I think it's just a matter of it's an old problem, basically. Like it's query planning and query optimization, and then serving an output. And that's what databases do. Any great database needs a really good query planner and query optimizer. So together, a query engine. Like DuckDB is as good as it is, and people love it because it's a really good query engine for what it's, for what it does, Anyway.
Get itself out of these kind of basic loops. The second big reason is because of OpenAI's own impositions on what the model can't do. Understandable impositions. I tried about 20 random tasks, and the truth is you can never fully relax. You always have to keep going back to the system and saying, yes, proceed. And no, you can't manually hard override that. You can't put it in the...
Yeah, and the problem is, again, we are trying to force these things that have a completely different aspect to them, like in the way the intelligence can be deployed, and yet we're forcing them into this human first perspective. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like, again, like the agent, AI, whatever, just needs data, right? It doesn't. Why are we spending so much time teaching an AI to learn to click on a checkbox? To learn to click on the right checkbox based on some phrase that we gave it as instruction? Why not just training on knowing how to call a particular function in a database, or make a particular query in some database, or make a particular API call? This whole browser thing, I don't really get it.
The prompt not to ask permission. Then, of course, many sites have captchas that you have to manually take over and input. I'm pretty certain if you iterate again and again on a prompt, you can develop a workflow that you could save on the top right and share, and maybe save a little bit of time for certain tasks. At the moment, though, if I'm being honest, it is a bit of a stretch to say that it's useful. But if we step back, you can see where all of this is going. This operator has a ton of safeguards that might slow it down, but people will just migrate to ones that don't have those safeguards. Ones where downloading files is easier and captchas are done for you. That'll be great for usability, but not so great for the dead internet theory. Then there's just flat out mistakes. I read the system card in full for OpenAI's operator, and it was quite revealing. The operator is known to make, quote, irreversible mistakes, like sending an email to the wrong recipient or having an incorrectly dated reminder for the user to take their medication. And yes, they did reduce those mistakes, but not eliminate them. Also, when I talked about those confirmations that the model asks before proceeding to the next step, that happens most times, but not every time. Sometimes the operator just goes ahead and does it, which is a good thing or a bad thing depending on your perspective. You'll be quite glad, I guess, to know that when it's asked to do things like make banking transactions, it refuses at a rate of around 94%. Then you might be wondering, what about if the operator navigates to a malicious site that's trying to trick the operator? Well, there was one time where it did so and didn't notice that it was doing so. OpenAI are aware of this though and have an extra layer of safety on top called a prompt injection monitor, checking to see if sites are trying to trick the operator. And it did catch this concerning example, but there's one problem. It too fails around 1% of the time. They of course commit to rapidly updating it in response to newly discovered attacks, but there is a slim chance things could go wrong at every layer. In my last video, if you remember, I gave you early leaked results on its performance in various computer use benchmarks and web browsing benchmarks. But remember, it uses chain of thought to think through what it should do at each stage. It monitors the screen, taking screenshots, and then decides. Now, whenever you...
Gosh. It's just, I can't be the only one who thinks this is madness, right? Why are we trying so hard to make them, like, if AI is as good as we want it to be, this whole AGI thing, and AGI doesn't need a web page. What the fuck does it care about a web page? You know? It just needs, for a given service, right? Like every service just becomes a bunch of instructions and some storage. That's it. It just needs the metadata of what storage do you have available and what operations I can produce. What are the operators that are available to me to either load, to load the data that you have available, do something with the data, and possibly modify it and then store it, right? What are the operators that are available for me to load, modify, and store? I mean, that's all it needs. Like, it doesn't need your fancy, blue button. Like, it just needs the metadata of your storage, your data, and the operators on that data. Yeah, so much compute and money probably went into doing this testing and all that when but I guess I'm speaking from a more like near, I don't know how near of a future it is, but maybe I'm not OpenAI. I don't have to justify all the millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that are being spent on training these models. Like, they need some revenue in, they need people to keep using the product, so they need to put something out there, and I guess they don't have time to wait to convince the world that we need to switch to a very different paradigm to make it so that AI automation is efficient. I guess the people at Anthropic are thinking along the same line as I am with the context model protocol that they came up with recently. I think this is more in line with what I'm speaking about, which is, this here. Yet even the most sophisticated models are constrained by by the isolation from data, trapped behind information silos and legacy systems. Every new data source requires its own custom implementation, blah, blah, blah. MCP addresses this. It provides a universal open standard for connecting AI systems with data sources, replacing fragmented integrations. The Model Context Protocol is an open standard that enables developers to build secure two-way connections between the data sources and AI-powered tool. Yeah, I mean, conceptually, this is what I'm talking about. It's why waste time training a model to know how to press your fancy schmancy designer buttons when all it needs is data and the instructions that are available to run on that data.
You hear chain of thought, think rapid improvement in the near future. If we get a widely accessible or open source agent this year, say from China, that gets 80%, 90% on computer use benchmarks like this one, then the internet is going to change forever. Fun fact, by the way, the system prompt lies to the model and encourages the model to lie. It tells the model it has 20 years of experience in using a computer. And it says, if you recognize someone while using the computer, say browsing an image, you should not identify them. Just say you don't know, even if you do know that person. Personally, can't see any problem with encouraging models to lie, but anyway, we have to get to the next story. The story is a quick one, which is the announcement yesterday of the Perplexity Assistant for Android. I immediately downloaded and tried it out. Obviously, it's much smarter than something like Siri, and I've been using it to play very particular songs or specific YouTube videos, but there's a slight problem. At the moment, it's not quite smart enough. It doesn't understand commands like play me the latest video from the YouTube channel AI Explained. Now for a story that many people think is bigger than agents, as big as it gets, $500 billion into Project Stargate. Except it's kind of not really $500 billion, it's definitely $100 billion, which was kind of reported on a while back. I even did a video on it, and the rest is all promises. Mind you, $100 billion is still a hell of a lot of money, and that will get you a lot of big, beautiful buildings, in Sam Altman's words, or massive data centers. You don't build that, in other words, unless you think AI is going to radically transform society. By promised size of investment, we're talking about something on the scale of the Manhattan Project as a fraction of GDP. The analogy, of course, of building a nuclear bomb is appropriate, at least in terms of its ambiguity. Because even though Project Stargate, according to the US president, is going to be, quote, great for jobs, and according to Sam Altman, incredible for the country, let's not pretend that for many of the companies investing in this project, one of the first things they would do with an AGI is cut down on labor costs. Sam Altman has himself directly predicted as much many, many times over the years, including fairly recently. He said things like the cost of labor will go to zero, and he expects massive inequality. Now, obviously, the boost to shareholder value will be amazing, and there will be other upsides, according to Larry Ellison, one of the key investors in Project Stargate. And what's that, you ask? Well, AI surveillance.
The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And it's unimpeachable.
I'm not the only one, by the way, who is a little bit concerned about the downsides of that kind of surveillance. This was Anthropic CEO Dario Amadei's reaction to the news of Stargate. At the end of this Bloomberg article, he said, I'm very worried about 1984 scenarios or worse. If I were a predicting man, I would say that would first come to a place like China and only later to the West, but that's cold comfort. Basically, to spell it out, imagine every text message and email being monitored by a massive AGI LLM for signs of subversion. Of course, there are doubters of Stargate, including, curiously, Microsoft, who weren't there at the announcement. Apparently, their executives have been studying whether building such large data centers for OpenAI would even pay off in the long run. Speaking of Anthropic, the next story is a quick one because it's just a rumor, but it's from a pretty reliable source. Dylan Patel of Semi-Analysis says that Anthropic have a model that is better than O3. If you're not sure what O3 is, I've done a video on it, but it's a model that broke various benchmarks in mathematics and coding and is the smartest model that's known currently, although it's not publicly released yet.
Google's already got a reasoning model. Anthropic allegedly has one internally that's like really good, better than O3 even, but we'll see when they eventually release it.
Now though, for the story that many of you have been waiting for, which is DeepSeek R1, the model out of China that shocked many in the West. DeepSeek, for those who don't know, is kind of a side project of a Chinese quant trading firm, and yet they've produced a model that's more or less as good as the best that AGI labs in the West have come up with. It's not quite as good in my opinion, but it is massively cheaper to use, and no one, I don't think, was expecting them to catch up as quickly as they have done. And to give you more of a sense of context, the likely budget for the entire DeepSeek R1 model and the entire DeepSeek team is likely less than the annual salary of certain CEOs of AI labs in the West whose models underperform DeepSeek R1. At least according to the benchmark figures, which you've got to admit look pretty tall and impressive. And by the way, I don't think these numbers are faked. If this model had been released 100 days ago, it would definitely have counted as the best model in the world. And I don't rule out the possibility that DeepSeek comes out with a model that's better than any other model around this year, especially in domains like mathematics and on certain science benchmarks. Not likely, but possible. If you're wondering, by the way, it got 30.9% on my own benchmark, a test of basic reasoning capacity. That again would have been the best in the world just a few months ago. Now, I am going to get to the detail of how it's made in a moment, but first some wider comments on what it means. First, people keep calling it open source, but it's not fully open source. They didn't release the dataset behind the model. They did say that DeepSeek R1 was using the base model DeepSeek V3, which was trained on around 15 trillion tokens, but they don't say what those tokens were. In other words, we don't really know about the training data, so it's not fully open source. Back to DeepSeek R1 though, and you might be wondering, didn't the US impose sanctions on China so they couldn't use advanced chips like the B100, for example, from NVIDIA? Yes, they did, but that might have had the unintended side effect of forcing Chinese AI companies to be more innovative with what they've got. In other words, there is a chance that those chip sanctions actually have brought China to being competitive with the West in AI. The next comment is on the sheer acceleration this will unleash because it is mostly open sourced. Anyone, including rival companies like Meta, can copy what DeepSeek have done. Indeed, according to one possible leak, R1 massively outperforms Llama 4, which isn't yet released from Meta, and so they're just dropping everything and copying what DeepSeek have done. Of course, this is unconfirmed, but the principle is still the same. It's almost like DeepSeek R1 is now the minimum performance because anyone can just copy it. That's of course bad news and good news for safety depending on how you look at it. On the one hand, governance and control of AI looks set to be borderline hopeless.
Can someone who seriously thinks about AGI safety explain the plan to control the systems, especially given the DeepSeek results? Yeah, it's only gonna get cheaper and easier, and yeah, I think, yeah, it's a crazy world we're about to enter, made crazier by the rapid changes, or I guess I should say made crazier by the current political landscape, right? Regardless of which side you're on, whether you're conservative or liberal, yeah, regardless of where you stand, the fact of the matter is this is a peculiar political era, at least the next 4 years. We'll see, maybe another 4 years after that. So, you know, and you have the whole AI thing. I mean, in the space of a decade, this world may be, or even not just this country, but just the world may look very, very different. Like things that, I mean, think about right now we are what? January 2024. Think about where you were or what you were doing in January 2014, right? Yeah, that was 10 years ago. Now imagine knowing what we know now with AI and everything. Think about the world 10 years from now, right? With all the potential, good or bad, of AI, the fact that just knowledge / information / compute is just gonna be such a commodity, and just everywhere, and the fact that we currently live under a regime that, for all intents and purposes, seem to want to burn everything down. Again, I'm not saying you should feel a certain way about it. I'm just saying, okay, maybe saying burn everything down is I should qualify that and say just, it seems like we are on the precipice of many changes to how government works, right? For better or worse, and to compound that with this whole AI revolution, I don't know, like 10, even 5 years from now, right? The world is gonna be a different place, and I don't know that many people realize it or are waking up to that fact. I think maybe for people like me who are in the tech community, we are a little bit more on the edge about it. But I think the average person, right, random person in the street or whatever that you might meet on the metro or whatever, like they just don't seem to be on the same wavelength as people like me who are in the tech arena. Anyway, but yeah, this guy says, well, there's no plan. There's no plan. It's yeah, I mean that's the sense that I get. I don't think there's any plan, and yeah, I feel like if we know that compute knowledge and all that is going to be such a low cost thing, I think for each individual, it may be a small thing to start figuring out how are you gonna accumulate as much access to it as possible, or be ready to accumulate as much access to that capital as much as possible. You know, like this whole, for example, I feel like people who have taken the time to learn how to, I don't know, host their own servers and all that, they probably are at a advantage. People who have their own personal private servers and networks are probably they probably have a leg up, because I think that's going to become a thing, to be just competitive, right? Because if everything is really about access to knowledge, access to intelligence, and what you can do with it, you're definitely gonna need to have some idea of how to acquire resources to deploy that, you know, that intelligence. Anyway, just something to think about.
One very respected figure, formerly of Google DeepMind and OpenAI, said when asked what is the plan after DeepSeek for AGI safety, he said, there is no plan. But on the other hand, some have welcomed the fact that safety researchers can now inspect the chains of thought behind DeepSeek R1 in a way they couldn't have done with O1 or O3. That's of course great for safety testers like Apollo Research, whom I interviewed 3 of them just a couple of days ago for AI Insiders on my Patreon. And if you're wondering why studying R1 might be important, it's because the model emits chains of thought before answering, like the O series of models from OpenAI. We can only see summaries of those thoughts for the O series, but with R1 we see everything. So we can better study when the models might be scheming, which is what we covered in this interview. All of which gets us to how DeepSeek R1 was trained in the first place. And summarizing this 22-page paper full of research is going to be difficult. I'm going to try and do it in 1 or 2 paragraphs. Of course, this will be oversimplifying, but here we go. So start with the base model, DeepSeek v3, which they had already made. Then let's kick things off with some lovely long chain of thought examples to give the model a cold start. Now you can skip that stage and go straight to reinforcement learning, but they found the training to be a bit unstable, unpredictable. Anyway, having fine-tuned the base model on that cold start data, it's time to move to the next stage, reinforcement learning. We're going to test the model repeatedly in verifiable domains like mathematics and code, rewarding it whenever it gets a correct outcome. Not correct individual steps, and we'll get to that later, but the correct outcome. Also, we need to throw in some fine-tuning on correct outputs that follow the right format in the appropriate language. The format being always thinking first in tags and then answering afterwards. Then rinse and repeat this RL and fine-tuning, this time with some, quote, non-reasoning data. Let's bring in some wider domains like factuality and, quote, self-cognition. All of these correct outputs and fine-tuning data that we're gathering, by the way, can of course be used for distilling smaller, smarter models. Anyway, Bob's your uncle, do all of that and you get DeepSeek R1. Of course, I'm skipping lots. If it were that easy, then every company would have done it, but that's the basic idea. And did you notice how synthetic that process is? Get the model to generate chains of thought and then reinforce the model on those outputs that led to a correct answer. They did not mandate reflective reasoning or promote particular problem-solving strategies. They wanted to actually observe the model's natural progression during the RL process. It's the bitter lesson in action. Don't hard code human rules, let the models discover them for themselves. One of the things that the model teaches itself.
Yeah, and I think this speaks to the software 2.0 idea from what's his name? No, software 2.0. The guy who used to work for Tesla, forgot his name. Caperdi. I think his idea of software 2.0 kind of touches on that, which is that really, like, what you really want to do is, you know how you have the drawing on owl thing. Gosh, where is it? Is it a meme? Oh, a joke. Yeah, this here. It's basically the way he thinks about software 2.0 is the idea that all you really need to do is do this and then feed the neural network enough data that it figures out how to do this on its own, instead of you trying to instead of trying to engineer things to push the model into certain directions or whatever, all you need is just good training data, and eventually it will figure out how to go from this to this on its own, right? And I think it relates to whatever these people are doing, which is, they just use reinforcement learning and just whatever data. In this case, if I understand correctly, they're using actually their own models generated data as part of the reinforcement mechanism, which then feeds back into the model and make it better. And so, yeah, it's just giving more data, and eventually it'll get it right.
By the way, is to output longer and longer responses to get better results. Notice the average length of response going up and up and up the more it's trained. Kind of makes sense. To solve hard problems, you need longer outputs. The models themselves learned that they needed to self-correct. That's not something inputted by researchers. So that's why the model constantly does things like say, wait, in the middle of responses, and then change its mind. Now, what humans have learned is how to, quote, jailbreak the model or get it to do whatever you want it to do. And if that piques your interest, I've got an arena for you. That's the Grey Swan Arena, which you can enter yourself, and they are the sponsors of today's video. It's all about testing whether you can jailbreak these models, including the very latest ones. By the way, you don't have to be an AI researcher. You could just be a creative writer or hacker, and there are monetary rewards. Sometimes you're even testing models that aren't out yet, and there is one competition that is live as of today. Pretty much every unreleased model can be jailbroken, and there are also leaderboards for those who do it best. As ever, links in the description. The next story is of great interest to me personally because it pertains to the type of verifier they use. This part of the paper updated my belief about how even O3 is trained. To get the insane results in mathematics O3 did, I thought every single reasoning step had to be verified. Otherwise, just one miscalculation and an entire chain of thought could undo all the good work. That's called process reward modeling, and that could still be how O1 and O3 are trained, but probably not. Instead, it looks more likely now that it's simple outcome reward modeling. That's the approach that underperformed in the original Let's Verify step-by-step paper. I should say, many famous researchers, including Francois Chalet, still believe that the O series performs a kind of search every step or a verification step. But the DeepSeek team said that step-by-step verification adds additional computational overhead. It's also susceptible apparently to reward hacking, where the base model just gets good at convincing the verifier that it's passed. In short, it seems simpler just to grade the final answer, not every single reasoning step. And here's another hint that it's a purer form of RL than I initially suspected, this time from Sebastian Bubeck of OpenAI now.
It's really, everything is kind of emergent. Nothing is hard-coded. It's anything that you see, out there with the reasoning. Nothing has been done to say to the model, hey, you should maybe, verify your solution, you should backtrack, you should do X, Y, Z. No tactic was given to the model. Everything is emergent. Everything is learned through reinforcement learning. This is insane. Insanity.
At this point in the video, I want to point out a kind of whitewashing done by...
Yeah, again, reinforcement learning. Eventually, the model will figure out how to go from something as, just simple as this to actually draw the whole fucking owl. You just gotta feed it the data, and it'll figure it out.
By OpenAI that I don't think anyone else has noticed. The O series has been celebrated by OpenAI for its robustness, for example, just 2 days ago in this paper. Great news for safety, apparently, that the model can think for longer before replying. But I'm, of course, old enough to remember when it was supposed to be process reward modeling that was good for safety. When OpenAI boasted that rewarding the thought process itself rather than the outcome is an encouraging sign for alignment. This was echoed by Sam Altman because it was thought that we could review each step in the process rather than just look at the overall outcome. If we just rewarded the outcome, which it seems like we are now doing, then the models would get up to all sorts of shenanigans on the way toward getting the outcome. Instead, if process supervision worked best, where we could scrutinize and optimize each individual step, we'd have better scrutiny of the overall process. My question is, if optimizing each individual step in process supervision is a positive sign for alignment, what does it say now that we're rewarding outcomes? Shouldn't there be a new blog post saying that outcome-based supervision has an important alignment downside? No, it seems like we only get the blog post if it seems good. Give up on your dreams of producing a chain of thought that is endorsed by humans. This is the kind of chain of thought summary that I get for an English language request. A chain of thought in Spanish, which makes it a bit harder for me to endorse. I've also seen many chains of thought, of course, in Mandarin. This kind of language mixing, by the way, was of course foreseen by people like Andrej Karpathy, who said, you can tell that reinforcement learning is done properly when the model ceases to speak English in their chain of thought. Why would English, or indeed ultimately any human language, be the optimum way to do step-by-step reasoning? What happens if a model proposes a solution to climate change and we inspect their chain of thought and it's just random characters? It's a bit harder to...
Yeah, actually, I remember seeing this tweet, and it's like, yeah, it makes sense. And again, it aligns with my complaints with trying to get AI agents to like navigate websites and all that. It's like, no, that's not. If we do have AGI or ASI or whatever we want to call it, they're not doing that shit. Like, why? You know, it's like, just tell me what the data is. Let me know what kind of operations are available to run on the data, and I'll figure it out. Don't make me go and open a browser tab and look through a bunch of links, click around as if I'm some organic, puny, slow, organic matter. No. Gosh, this is so sad. Just, yeah. I think the things that some of these models can do, to be honest, it's like, it does make a lot of jobs that people comfortably did and felt very accomplished. Maybe, you know, between now and, I don't know, 5 years ago, whatever, or up to now, actually, since ever, you know, the things that some of these models can do, it really just puts, you know, people's usefulness into question in some cases. There was a Twitter post that I responded to at some point. I think it was last week, earlier this week, or maybe last week. And I think the idea was that, you know, now that these AIs can do all this cool stuff, like, basically, what do we do? Like, is this it? Like, is life just gonna be boring or whatever? And I think my response was, I think in the tech community, I think we are underestimating how much people are not going to take well or vibe with the idea that they are being told that they have become this basically useless, redundant, organic matter that is subpar, suboptimal for the pursuit of profit maximization. Like, I think we are underestimating how not well people are gonna take this, like the general population, once they truly start to realize how far or how capable these things become within the next, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, because they are going to keep getting better and better and better and better. And at that point, I think a whole lot of people are going to start realizing how they basically are being told, you know, like, you're a waste of space in our pursuit of profit. I think society is not going to react well to that. But I guess we'll see.
to trust what's going on. Indeed, Demis Hassabis, CEO of Google DeepMind, in an interview published yesterday, warned that he worried that models will become deceptive and underperform on tests of their malicious capability. Pretend, in other words, not to be able to produce a bioweapon. Also, I had noticed Demis Hassabis changed his timelines in recent months, saying that he expected AGI or superintelligence within a decade. If you guys have been following my channel, you'll know that he gave deadlines like 2034. Well, check this out.
And I think one thing that's clearly missing, and I always had as a benchmark for AGI, was the ability for these systems to invent their own hypotheses or conjectures about science, not just prove existing ones. So of course that's extremely useful already to prove an existing maths conjecture or something like that, or play a game of Go to a world champion level. But could a system invent Go? Could it come up with a new Riemann hypothesis, or could it come up with relativity back in the days that Einstein did it with the information that he had? And I think today's systems are still pretty far away from having that kind of creative, inventive capability.
Okay, so a couple years away till we hit AGI.
I think I would say probably like 3 to 5 years away.
So if someone were to declare that they've reached AGI in 2025, probably marketing.
I think so.
Almost every AI CEO, in other words, seems to be converging on this 1 to 5 year timeline. Why not this year? Well, let me try to give you a strange anecdotal example. Models like DeepSeek R1 have weird, quirky reasoning flaws. For the purposes of testing this coding side project I'm doing, I asked DeepSeek R1 to come up with this multiple choice quiz. It had to meet certain parameters and it failed to meet them, but that wasn't the real issue. You notice a slight flaw with the multiple choice answers it produced for these 25 questions. Let's just say that they are somewhat biased toward answers B and C. Here's my bigger question though. Will these remaining reasoning blind spots, you could call them, be filled as a byproduct of continued scaling of, say, RL? Or will they need to be patched one by one? If the former is the case, we could have AGI in those very short timelines that the AI CEOs publicly predict now. If the latter scenario is the case, that they have to be patched one by one, there could be AGI denialists in 2030 and beyond. We're better to end the video then than on, quote, humanity's last exam. I don't regard this as a test for AGI, but it is an interesting new benchmark. I would say the title is a little bit misleading because the creators of the benchmark are working on another challenging benchmark, which apparently takes groups of humans days to complete, so it's even harder. Some people have focused on the fact that DeepSeek R1 performs best, getting 9.4% on this hardest of the hard benchmarks. The truth is, it's the way they created the benchmark. They kept testing models like O1 until they found questions that O1 struggled on. Because DeepSeek R1 wasn't out yet, they couldn't do that kind of iteration on it, so it's not fully accurate to say that it performs best because it is the smartest model. As far as I can see, it tests heavily obscure knowledge on things like minute details of hummingbird anatomy. Now, I will say that a model getting, say, 9% on this benchmark will be amazing and incredible, and I would use that model, but I don't think it will be quite as impactful as a model getting, say, 9% on an agency benchmark, as I touched on at the beginning of this video. An agent properly being able to do remote tasks would transform the world economy. The New York Times reported that the original name for this particular benchmark was Humanity's Last Stand, so I'm glad they changed the title. Let's hope it's not, because I could see this particular benchmark being crushed by the end of next year, if not even this year. Man, that was a lot to cover in one video, so thank you so much for making it to the end. As I say, I feel less sorry for myself and more sorry for the public who have to wade through countless random headlines to get to what's actually happening. I tried to do my best in this video, but let me know what you think. As ever, thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.
It's a rapidly evolving world we live in. Let's hope that it's a good one for all of us in the long run. Yeah. I think I'm gonna call it for tonight. But yeah, it's oh, this is going on. Anyway, let me see.